I was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles by a single undocumented mother from Mexico City. My mother crossed the border when she was 40 years old and 3 months pregnant with me. There were many reasons why she chose the United States, and particularly Los Angeles as her destination. From seeking better wages, to living in a more spacious house, to giving me the best education opportunities, these were all justifiable reasons for her to leave Mexico. Like millions of immigrants that leave their homeland to come to the United States, my mother was also pursuing the American dream. After 22 years of living in Los Angeles, my mother is in her 60s, working as an undocumented hotel maid with no retirement plan or health insurance. I have two siblings who are also undocumented and working low pay jobs. My brother is 41 and my sister is 37. Even though I am the only member in my nuclear family with US citizenship, I grew up hiding in the shadows with them. To this day, I still fear that my family will one day be deported and separated from one another. Due to my family's connection with Mexico, I grew up speaking Spanish as my first language. While I was learning informal Spanish at home, I was being instructed in school to speak English only. I struggled to balance both languages and tried to not get too embarrassed in school and at home. Even when I visited my relatives in Mexico City, I would get laughed at for speaking Spanish like a quote unquote gabacho and not being Mexican enough. Back in California, however, I was laughed at for being the opposite. Growing up in South Central Los Angeles meant being surrounded by gangs, drugs, peer pressure, and poverty. I didn't really pay much attention how my geographic location affected my learning opportunities and how it ultimately shaped my academic and professional goals. I attended Title I public schools from the day I started kindergarten to the day that I graduated high school. I vividly recall the overcrowded classrooms, the lack of consistent teachers, and seeing my classmates being gradually pushed out the educational pipeline. I was very fortunate to leave Los Angeles to pursue my bachelor's in sociology at Westminster College in Salt Lake City. I started to get involved in the Latinx community my freshman year when I joined a nonprofit organization called WeCan, which focused on connecting college students with historically underserved and marginalized students of color at a local junior high school. I was shortly offered an internship in that to improve the connection between both institutions. I then founded the first mentoring club at Westminster College to increase my student participation on both ends. Although we aimed at serving students of color in general, the majority of our junior high participants were Latinx. During my sophomore year, I began working for a college access program at East High School called Gear Up as an outreach mentor. We primarily served low income and first generation high school students. However, the majority of our student demographics were Latinx students who lived in the west side of Salt Lake City. After working in the school for 3 years, I was recently offered a different position within Gear Up where I will be working with the parents directly. I will be doing workshops with parents where I will cover topics such as FAFSA, the college application, and scholarship information. During the last 2 years of my undergrad experience, I started another program called Roses in Glendale that focused on teaching a social justice class to high school students in Glendale. The majority of our students were Latinx, and we covered a variety of issues, including but not limited to race, poverty, gender, education, patriarchy, and income inequality. The purpose of that class was to expose them to the literature that covered these issues because the truth is, most of the time they won't learn all these theories and concepts until they are in college. After teaching this class for the first time last spring, I realized that I want to commit myself to connecting my personal lived experiences as a Chicano from the inner city, LA, to my academic work so that I can one day contribute to the existing literature on how we can improve academic success in the Latinx community. To conclude, I am aware that there is research out there that recommends several practices which we can improve the educational experiences of Latinx students. Yet, these educational institutions fail to consider and implement those practices within their schools. With that being said, I am particularly interested in understanding how we can close the gap between research and practice to help Latinx students successfully complete high school and go on to college.